I think something that's really important that people don't say, I don't know the exact way to say this, but it's kind of like if you start doing it, that will come. Past a certain point, I just decided I just want to do A, things that are like, stuff I've never done before, and B, everything that's opposite of the last thing I did.
I think there's a Seinfeld episode about that. It's like the bizarro world. You want to do just the opposite?
No, yeah, and I'm the George Costanza.
That's awesome.
I've seen that one where he walks up to the girl and he says, I live with my parents.
Right.
I don't know how to cook, And she says, would you like to go out? But for me, I've been in the business for a while now, and it's the thing that gets me excited is every time I'm doing something, I don't know what that is. I have to research it and figure it out and, use a new muscle.
Yeah. I love that philosophy, the zig and zag,
Let me tell you something. No one has that philosophy except for me. It's a bad philosophy, I think, for Hollywood. But I never really wanted to be an actor. Someone saw me in a high school play. So that 70's show was my first audition I ever went to. And what that afforded me was the ability to just kind of, just do what I want to do. And I thought, I just turned 40. I thought, might as well do what I want to do. I'm just going to die at some point.
Halfway done.
Well, probably more than halfway done. And in terms of career stuff, I might as well just do stuff that when I'm on set, I'm loving it. Not when I'm thinking, what will it be like when it comes out, or how will other people like it? Just do I like the experience I'm having on set that day?
To me, that translates as artist, versus actor, because when you transform into that artist category, then you don't do it for the money, you don't do it for the fame, you do it for for yourself probably first.
Well, you've seen both, right? You were in a position where you could probably, without naming names, which you can't do, you give me examples without telling who they are, where you went, oh, that thing, it's working, but I'm right, it has an expiration date on it too, because times change, and then whatever that thing is goes out of style, right?
Yeah. And the other thing that was surprising was you'd meet someone who you've watched in movies or TV, and you have this. Oh, I'm sure you get this all the time. People feel like they know you, and it's a lot of backslapping and high fiving, and then you meet them in real life, and it's like, whoa, total opposite.
But then you'd see them at the premiere, also become the thing that they're faking being, right?
Yes. Yeah. When behind the scenes like this, the manager whispered in my ear, "Don't look him in the eyes."
Right. All right, him. That brings us down about 50% of the people. I'm going to bring up IMDb and just look at all the Universal.
Yeah. And he's so funny too.
Right. Right. No, I've had all those experiences. I went from like I said, never having worked before, ever.
Yeah.
I didn't even have a car or anything. To then being on a show and having these experience, meeting these people that I was just with in pop culture. I was watching them, felt like I was with them, and then to actually be with them, and the rude awakening of what that was. But it was really healthy at the beginning, because I didn't have an Oscar speech written in the shower. A lot of kids, if they want to become actors, they're ready way in advance of them having success with it.
Wait, take two.
Yeah. I didn't know any of that, so it was very informative at the beginning to meet people who. It was really good sometimes to meet these actors who were doing so great, who seemed so miserable, and go, oh no, I want to make sure that I do whatever it is that makes me happy with the process all the time.
Did you get some advice from these journeyman actors or the more experienced, saying, don't change, make sure you stay innocent?
Well, everyone says don't change at the beginning. You don't even know what that means, especially if you're as young as I was. I don't even know who I am yet. I only want to change. And I think it is healthy to grow and change, but
how can you not? It's inevitable.
How can you not? What they're really saying is don't become a crack addict or whatever.
Yeah.
Too late, I guess. But
no judgments here.
No judgment. All right, good. There's no cameras here, right? Can we? But I thought the good advice I got mostly was working with people. I feel like I can't speak to other industries. In fact, I'm sure it's probably different. But in acting, there's not a lot to say about it. There's just a lot to be next to someone and kind of through osmosis learn. And then there's a lot to learn when you don't know someone because you can experience the product. Movies are one of the few things that everyone experiences. Like not everyone experiences being an architect. I guess actually we do because we all live in houses. That was a terrible metaphor, but
I'm
you know what I mean.
I'm rolling with it.
Being I don't know, whatever, being an astronaut or whatever. But like, I do think the first couple films I was on, I was just a sponge, and I would ask advice to some of these great people, and most of the people I worked with were so great, they were so modest that they didn't want to, I don't know, suppose that they knew anything either. But just watching some of them and what I realized was, because I was so young in it and so bad when I started, frankly, that I could see what a skill, what a trade was. And it's something that's learned over a long period of time. In
your defense, though, inexperience. I wouldn't say bad. Maybe you're inexperienced. That goes with the territory.
Well, I mean, I was doing the best that I could with the knowledge I had, which was zero.
Yeah.
So
it's fair.
Yeah, my learning curve was like just inverted. I mean, I was like every day I had a headache. I was learning on the pilot. I remember the director said, "Great job in that take. You didn't face any of the cameras." It's like it's not a very deep character note, It's like just make sure that your face is visible to the camera.
Yes.
So like I had to go.
Pro tip.
That's just for anyone who's starting out there. I mean, anyone who hasn't been on a TV show would know that. But I was so it was so hard at first, and then the thing I'm most proud about, that was 20 years ago that show started. Having been in it for a while, is I didn't realize you can really learn a trade, and there's still tons to learn.
What's your definition of a perfect day?
Probably, the bad news is my folks sold that house, but the good news is they moved to Santa Barbara, so they live here. So I guess there was a day a couple weeks ago where my parents came down, and they're visiting with my wife and my daughter, and we were outside, and it was a beautiful day, and I can't get better than that.
What was your very first job?
My first job was I worked at Suncoast Video at the Stanford Mall in Connecticut. So kind of related to my job now.
A little foreshadowing. If you could live in any era, which era would that be?
Oh man, I would love to live in like 1880s New York. I pass some of those buildings sometimes, and like I have this thought of like, oh man, right before automobiles came into it, but like the most, like all the technology we had right before automobiles in America would be just, Christmas time, by the way, too. Like snow's fall. Not that I've thought about it. Like snow falling. Do you know what I mean? Like people are sledding outside and shit. Oh, it'd be amazing.
I heard, or I read somewhere, one of your favorite movies is It's a Wonderful Life, or your character's is Jimmy Stewart's character.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I like his character, but truly I like that movie more than anything else. I think, that's just a perfect film, perfect American film.
Yeah, you were talking about New York. I pictured, it went black and white in my mind, and then I went right to Bedford Falls.
Yeah, Bedford Falls, It's got a little bit of that's what, the 50s or it's actually like the 20s through the 50s, I think. But, I mean, I'll take any time. Any time in that zone, yeah.
If you could take any lesson from any expert, what would you learn?
Man, still working on it. The thing I didn't understand when I was younger is how powerful and good failure is. I'm still working with it because no one wants to fail, but it actually is the thing that I think makes people grow and become better.
Do you have a superpower?
My superpower is returning things to chains. Like I just did it yesterday at Bed Bath & Beyond, and just staying there until it gets awkward, and they really give you the full refund.
Did you bring your receipt?
Well, I did the whole thing. I mean, I'm good at all that stuff,
okay.
But I don't mind the trick is not minding the awkwardness, because that's what they're banking on. You're gonna mind it, and if you don't, the world is your oyster.
And finally, do you have a go-to power song?
Yeah, I'm gonna go back to the Future. Power of Love was like it. When I saw that movie, I was in 2nd or 3rd grade. And it's the best pop song that probably ever came out, right? Oh, what's yours?
My power song? My power song was probably Eminem's.
Oh,
What's the title of it? You know what I'm talking
Lose
about?
Yourself.
Yeah, Lose Yourself.
But, oh yeah, I forgot. You're 20 years younger than me. What am I saying?
I doubt that. But you know, that's just me.
That's a good one too. That's a really. I remember when that movie came out. I went to see it with a friend, and he said like, "How could this not be a hit?" It's just. Do you know what I mean? Like even without the rapping, it's like amazing to listen to. Yeah.
Yeah, he nailed that role, and that was a great film. So
Was that
now-
you? Were you there then?
I was alive during that film.
But were you uni then?
Was I? I didn't work on that title.
Oh, okay.
I was at uni during Aaron Brockovich, Meet the Parents,
Yeah.
The Grinch.
Okay, keep
Shrek.
this part in. You're gonna cut it
Yeah.
out because you're talking about yourself and it's all about your guest. But Meet the Parents. I went to the premiere of that, and I went with Laura
remember.
Prepon and Wilmer Valderrama. I know you don't remember. You know how you don't remember? It's because there were 5 theaters that had it. It was such a big. It was an original movie, and it was such a big premiere that Jay Roach had to go from screening room to screening room, kind of. And I went with Laura Prepon, who played Donna on 70's show, and Wilmer Valderrama, who played Fed. And we were just starting the show, and we were starting to figure out our senses of humor. And that is such a masterpiece of comedy, that movie.
Yeah.
And the way it rolled out, and whatever you did on that thing was like, I remember sitting in that premiere, like, that's the only time I can say people were rolling in the aisles, like literally kind of falling out of their chairs, like laughing. It was so great.
Yeah. I mean, that's probably a lot of credit to Jay. It's a lot of credit to Ben.
You see what he's doing here? This is a good
Robert.
trick for your audience. And who else? Who rolled it out?
Well, you know,
Yeah.
I mean,
It's a perfect rollout, right?
it was a huge team effort. There's more than 300 people in just my department. It was a lot of
But
fun.
I'm saying I was at the premiere, man, and that's probably because of your department. And I thought it was like, I mean, it's funny because I've been in things that have done well or have been good and not done well. And there is 2 different, I don't think people understand that well enough. They kind of think like, and you know, It's a Wonderful Life, which you bring up is a perfect example. That was a flop.
Yeah.
One of the great movies of all time. It just didn't come out the right way.
Yeah, it's interesting. I want to talk about audience development, how you are or not paying attention to that, because I think with this new media platform, direct to consumer, you know, this show, you can see it on like Inc. magazine and other places, but we've got a very actively engaged YouTube channel. We have this will be turned into a podcast as well. And it's kind of like a little ecosystem. It's very interesting.
Well, a lot of it has been new to me because I started this podcast, and I didn't even listen to podcasts. That just wasn't my thing. I'm also like, if I'm like using it as a technology, it is peaking. Like I didn't buy a computer until like YouTube was a thing, and I was like, all right, so you can just press on the button and it'll play the video. And I didn't have email until like 8 years ago. So I went on Anna Faris's podcast, who's a friend of mine, and I guess I listened to it a couple times before, so that was the only podcast I really heard. And I had a blast. It's like, you know, I was just hanging out here, like hanging out with you. And then her producer asked me out to lunch and said, do you want to do your own podcast? I want to produce it. And I said, oh no, I mean, I don't even understand any of these platforms you're talking about. And he talked me into it. He said, what it really was I said, I guess I'd do it. I like being open to new adventures, but I don't have a thing I want to talk about. I mean, I don't want to talk about acting. I have to talk about that all day at work. And
Math is out the door.
Math is not going to happen. So I guess I don't, you know, I like editing. That's a very visual medium. So I said, I've got nothing. My wife and I always joke that if we had a reality show about us, it would be us watching other reality shows. Like we're not interesting. And he came up with this great format, which is called Minor Adventures, where with the guest every week. It was great, so I don't have to be a host. I just ride the ride with them. You know, we'd go on, like the first episode, Whitney Cummings came on, and the guest never knows what we're going to do, and we took a lie detector test together. And the next episode, Paul Scheer came on, and we did telemarketing, got kind of competitive.
So wait, do you know what's going to happen? Does the
I know
producer
what's gonna
tell you?
happen.
Okay, so it's not like you're walking in cold.
Yeah, but I don't. Me being good at the adventure is not a precursor to doing it. Chrissy Metz just came in and we did beatboxing, and it turned out she was great. She actually, I didn't know that she was married to like a hip hop producer or something at some point. So like she was really good at it, and I was awful. But The last one we had was great. It was Zach Levi came on and we married a couple. I just like, especially having a young kid now, like, it's hard to get out of the house, and I have a reason once a week to get out. So I personally love doing it, which, as you know, is one of my reasons to take a project. And then on top of it, I've been learning about all these new mediums and what this is, and understanding how powerful it is to be able to, come on here with you today and talk directly to this audience that you've created. And the only thing that's interesting is there's a million different audiences now. It's so different than when I grew up.
Yeah, I want to go back and kind of unpack what you said, because it was subtle, but I think really important nugget for the people who are watching or listening, which is, we talked about this zig versus zag attitude of yours, which is, if everyone's going this way, I'm going to go the opposite way. Or if I just did this role, I'm going to do the opposite. I think Robert Frost has a pretty popular poem about that, right? Like, two roads diverge, right? And he took the path of least resistance, he took the other one, and that made all the difference, says Robert Frost. Has that kind of been your experience? Is that, it sounds like you're purposely jumping out of your comfort zone. Break that down a little bit. What's the value been, the benefit been?
It's funny. Yeah, I have that in terms of what I do in my career. That would be, I've never thought of it that way, but that would be the thing that connects having this podcast to also having this very different career. I actually like adventure. I didn't title the show. It was something Sim Sarna, who came up with the idea of that format. Yeah, he's Anna's producer. He came up with the title.
Well, I love the key art too, which is kind of you out of a romantic novel.
Well, they're minor adventures. They're not like, I look like Fabio on that thing.
Yeah.
It's like we wanted to communicate that it wasn't, deadly adventures. It's kind of just fun. But I
took it pretty seriously.
You took good. Well, I show up. I do it whether I think I'll be good at it or not. But I would say that is the thread that connects what I do in all things. But I felt the same way about parenthood. I'm certainly not great at it, but it's not like anything I've tried, and I'm very passionate about it. I'm trying my hardest.
Yeah. And so what benefits have you seen from jumping out of your comfort zone?
Oh, well, yeah, that I've been feeling for years in acting, and then I'm trying to apply it to other places in my life, like this podcast, and also friendships and new people I'm meeting. The benefits of trying things you're not good at, I think first you got to fail at something. Mm-hmm. The problem with being, I'm going to put a number on it, but I just mean to say you're young, but in your 20s, is you want to succeed. It's funny, I watch my daughter, she's like a year and a half, and she wants to succeed. She wants to show you she can walk, and she wants to show you she can talk, and you're not that different when you're 20. You want to show the world, I can do what you guys are doing too, and then I think the better you do, because you're starting at zero, so there's really, you can fail as much as you want, and the better you do, the scarier it gets to fail, especially publicly. And we're in a job where it's going to be a public failure, both what you and I do.
Yeah.
But once it happens, it's so freeing, because you realize yes, it's failure, yes, it's public, but it's all, what I do for a living, it's silly. If you really break down, even the most serious movie, if you break down what it is, it's just playing pretend, and, it's an amazing way to make a living. We're not digging ditches or what. So once I got over that, I think like 20-year-old me might think that, have some judgments about me now, but me now knows that 20-year-old me should be jealous of me now, because I'm down to try all these different things. And what that really means is fail at all these different things. And then what that means is learn about all these different things.
Yeah, I think it triggers a few thoughts in my mind. I think I've heard Oprah say, sometimes you win and sometimes you learn, which I think is a
great quote. And what's funny is no one thinks about Oprah as having failed more than anyone. All you think about is her unbelievable successes. And Oprah, I'm not saying that you're a failure, obviously.
Yeah, and
but she's learned from some,
She probably learned from Maya Angelou, who was like her mentor.
Meryl Streep said something about she has the most Oscar losses of anyone in history, but she also has the most wins.
Yeah, and then the other thing I was thinking of, a lot of people will say failure is not an option. as if to say, I'm not going to quit, I'm not going to give up. But
if failure's not an option, it's like getting out of bed isn't an option. Like, I mean, one thing I've noticed is in the time, I mean, because an actor's career is just like that, but in the times that I feel like I'm going up, or things are going well, I'm messing up every day at something. And I'm talking little things on set, like you go, oh, maybe I should have said this differently to the costume person because that would have, what I mean, maybe this costume's a bad idea. Maybe the director said this, I should take that direction differently. So all these little things, you're bummed, like all the time. And you're doing just better and better. And then I've noticed when it seems like real easy and everything's going great, and your life's just really easy to handle, that's when it's kind of like, it's not going as great as it feels.
Yeah, I'm really glad you said that because I think that's what gets a lot of people stuck, almost in this ready, aim, state of life. It's like analysis paralysis, they call it. And they don't want to take a risk because they feel like everything's got to be perfect, especially, and I love saying this phrase, kids these days.
Kids,
but
with their M&M, like you were talking about.
People who are younger than us,
and M&M, right?
Who are now coming up the ranks, I'm going to take over the world. I have seen that hedging a little bit, afraid to.
I think people are defining that generation that way, right? It's kind of hard to. It's tough because when you and I were coming up, there weren't that many options, so it was easy to drive at a bullseye. And now, because of this kind of media, especially if you're going to this kind of, there's so many, it's infinite options, right?
Well, I also think probably, I'm assuming we grew up in the generation where your dad would throw you in the middle of the pool when you couldn't swim and say, "Go for it."
Well, maybe that's what causes that too.
And it literally is not metaphorical; it is sink or swim.
Right.
Whereas, now, a few generations later, there's a little different way of parenting that's a little more gentle, perhaps.
I've always wondered about now, because I remember I watched this Q&A with J.J. Abrams, who I think is brilliant.
Never heard of him.
Yeah, well, he's coming up in the ranks. At some point, he's gonna make a big splash. But someone asked him this a couple of years ago. YouTube just got $100 million that they're going to give to people to make new content. And it was a student asking him this, and he is not a cynical person. I mean, you could almost say no one is more qualified to say they are not a cynic than J.J. Abrams. But he said something in this classroom that I thought was great. He said, well, that probably won't make a difference. And the students are like, what do you mean, $100 million? And he said, yeah, but there have been the same number of paintbrushes and easels, or what do you paint on? Canvases, since 1000 BC, and there've always been kind of the same number of artists, and so I wonder generationally if that. I remember when people were talking about Gen X and Gen Y and whatever their problems were, and I understand what millennials, and then what's the generation after that? Gen Z, I guess.
I think so, yeah.
I think ultimately, isn't it there are 12 people that rise to the top of any given industry, and I don't know if that kind of parenting actually, most of I'm not talking about myself, these are people I've worked with who I think are much smarter than me, who are really geniuses in their field. I think that it comes from a place of so much passion that that kid would learn to swim if swimming was the thing they wanted to do.
Let's stay on that topic for a second of, living in, basically heading into 2020. Do you think now is the best time or the worst time to start something new? Let's say it's a new, film project or TV idea. And I'll qualify it by saying there's, thinking about YouTube, there's, millions, if not billions of hours of content uploaded daily.
Right. But I think the cream kind of rises to the top. This is what I'm saying about the painting thing. It's the same thing with YouTube. We all see. Did you see that Fresh Prince thing that just came out?
Yeah.
Yeah, everyone saw that. You know what I mean? Will Smith saw it, and it's if it's good enough, I think that's what JJ was saying. It rises to the top really quickly. Something I realized doing a podcast that Sim told me when I started is that when film started, there were 4 cameras in the world. You know what I mean? You kind of turn them like this. So you had to come to LA, you had to come to the company that had the camera, that was it. the weird thing about doing a podcast is one form of this type of new media is, and this is it right here, right? Mm-hmm. This box, how much does this cost?
I don't know, a couple $100.
All right, so there is a little bit of an exclusive club, but you can make a podcast off of your portable computer or whatever.
You can. Barriers are way down.
So it's the opposite. It's everyone has the ability, and yet there's kind of like, as I've done some listening, there aren't that many great podcasts, even though there are there's an ability to make an infinite amount of them. And so I think like that cream rises to the top thing, it's true either way. There were bad movies being made on those 4 cameras that people didn't watch, and Charlie Chaplin made a good one, and it rose to the top. And I think the same thing's true about podcasts, like the ones, when Serial came out. And I get a little bit mad at the generation you're talking about, and even people who are my generation, who, the ones who aren't dead yet, who are like, when I first came to town, if you wanted to get a tape of a film you made to a producer, you had to rent the camera, rent the boom, rent the lighting, learn how to use all that stuff. Like, if you didn't want to do it on video, it was even harder. I mean, that's like first a financial investment, and then like a time investment, and then you had to get it to people physically. You had to hand them the videotape, and that was very hard to find. Now it's like the distribution system is in place. It's called YouTube. Like the camera's on your phone. And I saw a great film called Tangerine shot on an iPhone. And that's a fantastic film. So I think like it's all the same in terms of the cream rising to the top. I just get more mad at people when they say, "How do I get there?" Because you go, just pick up a camera. It's in your pocket.
Well, and this show is a living example of, yes, now is the right time and the best time in the history of the world to do this because of all the things you just mentioned. Barrier to entry is low, cost of goods low. Hardly any more gatekeepers. Even back a decade ago when I was at the studios, I was on part of the team. If it was an acquisition or something, a committee of people would say no is like the default answer before we let's acquire that or not. But it was very, very difficult to get past the gatekeepers. And now you can just go audience direct, and even better, you don't need the masses. You just need the right number.
That's so right, and there's knowledge. I don't think anyone now who's in high school would understand how hard it was. If you wanted to learn about the film industry, you had to wait until there was a special on Jurassic Park because it made so much money. Okay, they're going to do a special on ABC on Sunday night at 7. And if you missed that, there was no thing to go watch or do. I mean, I was looking for it. I was so excited about this industry, and now it's available on YouTube. I mean, it's film school. It's probably it's 1,000 times over film school.
Yeah, and I would even tell people, what's the point of film school now? It's I'm sure you'll get a lot out of film school. I know people at USC and at Chapman Film School and places like that. Or
USC rejected me from film school. That's why I came out here, by the way.
Oh.
So let's not
Screw
give
them
them
then.
yeah. By the way, rejected Spielberg too. So
you're in good company.
they were right to reject me, but maybe they were off on the whole Spielberg thing.
And in fact, that's part of my claim to fame is I've been rejected by some of the most amazing people you had ever heard of.
I know. Yeah, if you could see the girls when I was single that I got rejected by, you'd just be amazed.
But what a waste, in some regards. Tuition and all that, whatever it costs to get in and out of that school, when you could just go to the School of Hard Knocks. And if you've got the chops, if you've got the talent, the creativity, the ambition, and then it is just kind of about doing, right? It's
I think that's the problem. Is I can imagine someone who's out there listening. And look, I'm not a filmmaker, so don't take it from an actor. I'm trying to do the actor version of what this is, which is basically have the smallest ego I can have when it comes to a project and say to directors, "Can I come in?" When I did Spike Lee's film, he didn't think I could play that role. No one did. I'd never played a Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan. I'd barely played any bad guys. So, no one kind of thought I was right for it. And I had to kind of beg to go in and just audition, which is something I hadn't done in a while. And I was happy to do it, but I had to memorize it and kind of go in there and sing for my supper. And then when I got it, they said, "He likes you for it, but it's a local hire," which, as you know, means that they weren't going to pay me anything to get there. They would kind of pay me scale to do it there. And I said, oh, I'll fly myself. Turned out to be just one of the greatest artistic experiences I've ever had. But I think everyone has when I'm thinking about someone who's watching right now, I think the problem is they probably heard this speech a lot, which is just start doing it. But I think the problem maybe at the beginning is, so if you're ready to lower your ego, you're ready to do whatever it takes, there's still a question of what do I have to say? And especially if you're young, the answer is probably not a lot because you haven't experienced a lot. And I think something that's really important that people don't say, I don't know the exact way to say this, but it's kind of like if you start doing it, that will come. Because the trials of doing it will illuminate for you things that you didn't know about the world and about yourself. But I think it's very hard for people to, they know they're like ready to fail and they're ready to try, but they go, where they get lost is what am I saying? And I would say, there's an old actor trick. If you have to yell in a scene, you don't feel like yelling. It's hard to, I'm not a yeller. Sometimes it's hard for me to start yelling. People say, just start yelling first, and then you'll start yelling. You know what I mean? Like it's hard. Like a great director told me that once. This guy did every episode of 70's show. I had to yell in a scene. I said, I don't really feel like yelling. He said, just start yelling. I said, why don't you just go? I just started yelling, and then I was yelling. And I would say the same thing to someone if they're sitting there thinking about making that jump. Think about, but I don't know what to say. If that's the thing that's making them aim.
Yeah, I like that. I'll add on to that my 2 cents, which is I also think it's a risk-benefit thing, right? Like the other thing that I see, and even an experience with myself is you go for it. You make that leap, right? If there's a ledge on this side and there's a ledge on that side, you take this leap, and then you leap too far and you realize, uh-oh, I'm not going to make it.
Yeah.
And then you perish.
Yeah.
So it's always, I think, good to do that risk-benefit analysis. It's like, if what I'm doing, I can come back and play another day, I can afford to fail, I can afford to look foolish or mess up, or I can't win, but I can learn. As long as you can come back another day and play, then it's worth the leap.
People give their opinion all the time. That's part of being an actor, both critics and, fun critics on the internet. Mm-hmm. And I think it's really important to say, what do I want to get out of this experience? Not what does everyone else want me to get out of the experience? I'm sure there's an archetype that people would be more happy that I'd play, but I don't know if I'd be happier playing that.
Well, we've kind of come back full circle now to Frost's poem, where you've got these...
The important thing to know about Frost is he got lost that time. That was the last poem he wrote. No one ever found him again. So I don't even know if that's good advice. He took this path and it was like, that was it. But I guess he's still out there having fun somewhere.
Unfortunate, but valuable.
But valuable information. He took the path less traveled, and he died.